I was in one of these shops, these shops where you can buy. It's not one of these shops that you can buy stuff in loose, but they're packaged up. Nuts and raisins and dates and all sorts of raw materials, I suppose. Basically, a lot of it, I guess, has been shipped in from other countries, but instead of going to like a supermarket and buying a little tiny packet of nuts, Brazil nuts or whatever you might fancy, and spending a fortune, they're in bigger containers. I've seen these other ones where you go in and they're in great big drums and you just bring in your own packaging or your own bags or whatever and scoop them up and weigh them out. It's that sort of thing. Anyway, I was happened to be in there because I do like nuts. And dates and those sort of things, and oats. I was buying some oats as well because winter is coming, and I do like porridge. I can have porridge all times of the year. I do like a little bit of that, and I don't put syrups anymore. I used to. Oh yeah, I used to love a bit of golden syrup with my porridge, but now I just eat it as that. I don't even put a bit of salt in it. Some people put salt in their porridge or they put sugary things in. I don't do any of that. It's just milk and the oats, and these bigger oats, so that you leave them a little bit of time, few hours or overnight, to rather than the commercial flakes, which are much thinner. Anyway, I was in a shop like that the other day, and there was a chap in there, and he looked at me, and he was a big bloke, and he was just chatting to the owner of the shop or the shopkeeper, and he said, "Look, there's a chap. Look at you. You need to start eating a few sweets and things," implying that I was very slim. And compared to him, of course, I was. And so he turned round to the woman. He said, "Have you got anything in here that's good for type 2 diabetes?" And I looked at him and I said, "Well, pretty much everything here, apart from the sweetie things, and they've got some sugar-free sweets and various things. Everything here is pretty good, but I do monitor what's in it. If they've got sugar or sometimes sunflower oil coatings on things like raisins and things. And in fact, I don't like sunflower oil because it's not a very good oil, especially if you heat it up. It has an adverse reaction, I understand. I guess it's okay if it's on like raisins and you're just eating a very small amount. But if you're using it to cook with, because the heating process turns it into... well, it would perhaps be wrong of me to say it was poisonous, but I don't think it's particularly good for the body. You're better off with things like olive oil. Anyway, that's a by the by. The point of all of this was to say it's interesting how a lot of people are not necessarily in control of not just their weight, but their health. And it made me think, why are not people in control of their health? I think a lot of the health things that people have when they go to their doctor and they're asking about things are pretty much self-inflicted by the way they eat. And it's not necessarily their fault. We're in a time in which we're surrounded by temptations of alcohol, sugar, and processed foods, which claim that they have fantastic benefits for us and don't. And you really have to sort of go into it these days and be quite mercenary about the sort of foods that you eat to actually understand that actually so much of the commercially produced foods are actually not really any good to you. I read in a book quite recently, about a year or so ago, this sentence that made me sit up and think really deeply about what I eat. And it says, why would you put into your body anything that had no nutritional value? Why would you put anything into your body that has no nutritional value? I mean, people eat because they think they're hungry, don't they? You think, oh, I'm a bit hungry, and so I'll have some crisps or a bit of chocolate or something to give me some energy. And because that's a bit of a myth, really, that the energy is going to give you is going to be relatively instant. It's going to take hours before it's even processed, that food. And it's more of a mental thing that you think, oh, if I eat this, I'll suddenly have energy. My body's suddenly got a lot of energy. But actually, it's working on foods that you've had on your very last meal, or even before that, that's been processed around the body, from what I understand. I am no expert, so these are just my humble opinions, so please don't take anything as I say as gospel. But of course, if it elicits a sort of, oh, that's interesting, and you go and find out stuff for yourself, that's good. I was chatting to somebody else, another friend of mine, who was saying it's interesting that when you go to the doctor and you say, you've got this condition and you need to do this, and you just need to, check out, make sure your diet is a little bit better. And so this person said, well, what should I do then? What should I do? And they said, well, the internet is a great place to find out information about your diet. So you think, oh, okay, you go on the internet, and of course the internet is a myriad of things, and each thing contradicts one another. So somebody will say, oh, well, this kind of diet is good, the Atkins diet, and then somebody will say, no, you don't want to do that. You want to do this sort of diet, or this diet, or the raw vegetable diet. And in the end, there's so many of these different things, and it's as if the human condition is looking for the miracle, that sort of magic bullet that here's some pills and it's all going to be all right. And I thought about this as well, that people often go to the doctor because it's not just that they're a doctor, a man of letters after his name, a man of training, a man who ought, or a woman, of course, a person, I say, a person who's got all this training and what have you, and ought to know. But I think half the time, we think that we need to be reliant on somebody else to look after our problems. And yet, and I argued back to this person, I said, but surely it's down to us. We're the one consuming the food. If we didn't consume all the bad food, if we didn't drink the alcohol, too much of that, if we didn't smoke and put in that, if we didn't eat processed food and sweets and crisps and things like that we as intelligent people do actually know. I mean, we do know this, don't we? We know the areas of food and drink that isn't good for us, and yet we continue to do it as if it's another little cake isn't going to hurt, is it? Just one more, I'll only have one. I'll only have these 2 biscuits. That's not going to hurt. And yet we have these only one bit of cake, only these 2 little biscuits, or I'm only putting 1 sugar in my tea at the moment. And we do this, but we're doing it all the time. So actually, the amount of all this rubbish that we're putting into our body happens all the time. But we know that we shouldn't be doing any of this. We know that actually, if we want to lead healthy lives, there are 2 basic things: eat healthy foods and do a bit of exercise. And it's the most simplest solution. And like in life, so much of life that is of benefit to us as human beings, it's either the free stuff, i.e. sunlight, is free when it's out. We're going into the autumn, so it may not be as much sunshine as you like, but sunshine, getting out into nature is free, apart from, okay, you might have to drive out there or cycle or walk out there, but if you can get at and being amongst trees, all of that is free and it's good for you. It's just good to get away from the rat race and the poisons of the pollution of industry and the noise of man-made noise, and just listen to the cacophony of birds and creatures. We know that these things are calming and they're very good for the human condition, and they're free. And the other thing that we know is that if we just eat healthy foods, and the problem is, I think, that we've got used to artificial flavours making food apparently seem much nicer and more tasty and have vibrant flavours. I mean, one of the things I find peculiar is that we'll have meat. And I think meat, there'll be those people who are vegan and those people who are vegetarian who say, well, you shouldn't be eating meat. And that's your argument, and you're absolutely entitled to your way of thinking, and I'm not trying to persuade you to eat meat. I eat meat, but I don't eat a lot of it. It isn't a necessity on my dinner plate to have meat. I can eat just vegetables on their own, and a balance of other bits and pieces like nuts and raisins and things like that, or eggs and things like that. But what was the point I was getting to? Meat. Oh, yes. So that if people have meat, they want to sort of smother it with something that's got a very big flavour, like a barbecue sauce or a spicy something or other. They'll have a chicken and they'll go, well, we'll have chicken, but we'll put this spicy chicken sauce on it, or whatever it is, in order to give that meat flavour. But meat has flavour, and I know industrialised meat has less flavour because the chickens have, or the whatever it is, the poultry or the whatever the animal is being fed on very bland food. So the flavour is pretty in the meat that we eat is then very bland, and I get that. But it seems to me that we've got so used to cramming on artificial flavours into our food that the nuances of food itself has gone, so that if you did have just a piece of meat on its own, you'd go, oh, this is a bit bland. And tasteless. I mean, okay, you might want to put a bit of seasoning on it, but that you might want something else on it, because that's what we've trained ourselves, because we're eating things like crisps with all these extra sort of flavourings on to make it sort of, oh, that's really nice, I must have more of that. And we've lost, it seems to me, the natural taste buds for just simple things. So I love a plate of vegetables, steamed vegetables. I might put a tiny bit of salt on and a little bit of black pepper. That's it. I don't need a sauce. I don't need creamy this. You might think, well, it's all a bit dry, isn't it? I might put a bit of butter on my potatoes. That's very nice. Proper, real butter, which actually has nutrients in it, because, if it's made with full-fat butter, full-fat milk, it's got the nutrients in it. I like simple foods. But the thing about that is, and I'm not lecturing to you, you eat whatever you like. I'm just interested in it. Are you interested in your health? Does your health concern you? And if it does, and are you looking elsewhere for this magic bullet? But I'm just saying, I'm somebody who has now over the years trained myself just to have simple foods, because I know that these simple foods are healthy. And by doing this, I've lost a bit of weight. We had a lady on here who was commenting in my previous videos that I was, grossly overweight. And when I started this, I was a little bit podgier than I am now, because I was eating too many processed foods. I wasn't eating very many. That was the thing. Now I've stopped eating processed foods altogether, and I feel even healthier, and I've lost weight, and I'm aware of my health, and I just have a balanced diet. And very rarely do I have sugary things. If people offer me a biscuit, I'm in that position where, I can have a biscuit. If somebody else has bought it, what have you, I can have it, but I'm not doing it myself day in, day out. And now, I'm not trying to lecture on anybody to do whatever they do. My question really in today, and I've done this in a very sort of fumbled way, I appreciate that in today's episode, but are you concerned about what you eat? Are you really concerned about it? Or do you just say you are? Or are you looking for somebody else to give you the answer? Because I think we all know what grown-up people, I'm not talking about children, but grown-up people know that what the answer is for a balanced diet, and they know that the basics they should do. But do you find it hard? I do find it hard to try and find the foods, because we're in this dreadful world in which you walk around the supermarket, and the way I look at it, you see packets of crisps, which has no nutritional value whatsoever, that you're being encouraged to buy, cereals, which claim that they've got these extra vitamins in, but you know that the initial product has been massively commercially produced. Say wheat, for example, where most of the nutrients aren't even in the wheat anymore, because they've taken them out because of these big industrial processes that they do, and then they add specific vitamins that they'll shove back in. But basically, it's not that nutrient rich. Or they've put in sugars and various things to keep it tasty. So I go down the supermarket and I see all these bright lights and these big, colourful displays of this, and you can have this, and it's all claimed to be incredibly healthy. But actually, I've trained myself now to think, no, these are all poisons, because then there's no real nutrients in there, value to me. And so I stick mainly to if I'm in a supermarket and I'm buying stuff, and I would rather buy straight from a farm. But of course, how easy is it to buy from farms these days? And I go on about, bring back small scale mixed farms for local communities. And I would love to see that. So I'm like the rest of us, forced in a way out of finances and what have you to go into a supermarket and buy the bland supermarket products. But I will only buy I'll stick to the vegetables, and I won't buy packets of this and the TV dinner of that, because I don't care about the convenience. I care about what I'm putting into my body. So I'm curious, are you concerned about what you put into your body, or do you just have faith in these big companies and all the words they put on their packaging and say, no, this is healthy? Or are you like me and think, well, actually, we were quite healthy during the war because we didn't have all this packaging. We didn't have all this commercial processed foods. We actually had to grow our own veg. We had very simplistic meals, but actually they were a lot healthier for us than we have today. Or am I just talking a load of old rubbish? I'd be interested in your thoughts about how you approach your health. Or are you looking for somebody else, like a doctor or a dietitian or somebody to give you the magic formula? Because I don't really think there is so much as a magic formula other than just eat natural foods and drink unsugared drinks, and you should be all right. And exercise a bit. We were talking about a whole load of what was reckless in the last video, so let's have a look at some of those. Ingram Cars says, I don't get irate or reckless driving anymore. Because I learnt a valuable lesson. A few years ago, I was driving back to work, having popped home for lunch. On the way, there was a train of about 12 cars in front doing about 30 miles an hour in a 60 area. I was late and the frustration was beginning to boil over. I moved left and right and my language was foul in the vain hope that they'd move on. A little while later, as we approached a dual carriageway, the cars began overtaking the front car that was going very slowly. Eventually, as I began to overtake this very slow car, I was still swearing and muttering under my breath, "What a miserable old bastard," and so on. And then as I got closer, something dawned on me. A huge wave of guilt came over me as I overtook this car carefully and trying not to look at the driver, for it was my dad. Yes, and that's very true. And actually, when I had my eye problem, I couldn't drive very fast. I had to be very, very careful because I still had one eye, but I had this other eye which was had a cornea transplant and was very susceptible to light. So I had to drive very cautiously and carefully. And it taught me, driving like that actually people have all sorts of different conditions. You might have stomachache, when you're driving. You think, oh, I need to pull over. I've got stomachache, or I'm feeling a bit sick, or I'm a bit depressed. Not everybody is the same as you when you're driving, and not everybody is late, and some people are just out for a leisurely drive. And yes, it is very frustrating. But there's nothing you can do, is there? You can't make somebody drive the way you want them to drive. It is irritating, but it is the world we live in. Now that I've got my van, I drive even more sedately because A, it's new, it's cost a lot of money, and also I'm higher up, and I don't know what it is about having a van. I'm not delivery man, so I'm not white van man trying to get round around. I feel I don't know. I feel like I'm driving a bus in some instances, and I just enjoy the driving of my van at a reasonable pace and not a fast pace. So I'm never reckless in my van. Maybe where I park sometimes is a bit reckless because it's a big van and you think, oh, there was nowhere else to park. Carl Chapman says reckless moments getting married and having a child. The other is a passion for motorcycles. That's interesting. Michael White says, I've never had children, which seems quite selfish. Not really. I think I always had an inkling the way society was heading, and I didn't want to inflict this broken country on them. I do regret my decision sometimes, but in general, I feel vindicated. I brought 3 children into this world, and although I I often think that my country that I love and adore has gone and made huge, massive decisions in the wrong direction. I do hope that by repopulating, I'm not so much inflicting them on here, but that they can make a difference. They can. It's up to them, of course. It's not for me to dictate to my children what to think or do. And of course, as they're smaller, you can't help but influence them and give them some of your principles for living, which we all do as parents. But you hope that something will rub off and that they will want to keep the traditions and customs and the history of this country, and maybe fight against some of the nonsense that's going on in the world. But then they may just completely embrace the nonsense and say, you know what, Dad, you're a dinosaur. Those days are gone. But I wanted to have kids, and we had kids, and I've loved every minute of it. Even though, of course, like we said in the parenting, you never let go. Robert Baverstock says on that subject of never stop being a parent, Richard, thank you. You make many of us feel normal. Oh, good. I've always said I may not be better than anyone else, but there is no one better than me. And that's a very good sentiment. There's nobody better. We're all the same. We all have varying degrees of skills and understanding of things and intelligence and stuff. But at the end of the day, we're all human. We all more or less have the same number of limbs and eyes and ears and things. We might vary a little bit, but we're all here to somehow get through life, whatever it is. So yeah, that's. I'm glad I make you feel normal. I know I have very strong opinions on some things, and people do like to disagree with me, and of course people are most welcome to disagree. I've never said you can't. I may not agree myself with them, and sometimes people get a bit annoyed if I don't agree with them, which I don't understand. Brian Jeffries says about 15 years ago, talking about being reckless, he says, I climbed a 250-foot tower crane and went across to the jib at the end, and the view was amazing. I did attract a lot of attention. Yes, well, I mean, if you can bear the heights, that would scare the bejeebies, is that the word? Out of it. I would, could not even get that. I would turn to jelly and be just sort of a quivering wimp. I'm not very good on heights, but well done to you if you did it. And of course, you didn't fall off because you wrote the comment. Susie Davis says, your fire breathing perhaps comes under the category of it'll be all right on the night, Richard. Oh, thank you very much. You have undoubted showbiz talent. I'm not sure if it's talent or recklessness. But anyway, when I was about 10 years old, my brother made a go-kart out of planks of wood. Great fun. Some wheels, and some wheels, rope and fixings. Yeah, classic box cart type go-kart thing. Great fun, loved it. Both my brothers had fun running it down nearby grass slope. Of course, not wanting to be left out, I insisted on having a go myself. The only downside was that the said go-kart had no brakes. We made a video in which we made one using a tin bath, actually, quite recently, and that had no brakes. Sending myself picking up what seemed to be ludicrous speed, I steered into a stand of long plants. Thankfully, the plants had the desired braking effect and stopped the go-kart. Unfortunately, there was also an undesired stinging effect. They were stinging nettles. Yes, can you imagine going headlong into stinging nettles? Absolutely painful at the end of it. Yes, reckless behaviour indeed for you, Susie. And Dot, finally, on today's one, says, Andrew Winkworth and Tina. Is that who you are? Because it's just got a full stop. So I called you Dot, but it's Andrew Winkworth and Tina says, hi Richard, glad you thought our provoking question of if man didn't exist, would God exist? Well, it's an interesting question because I guess God may well exist if man doesn't exist. I'm not saying that it's a man-made construct or anything. I just personally don't believe in it. But that man wouldn't know anything about it, even if he did exist, because man wouldn't have existed, I guess is what you're saying. But, he says, have to say your story of fire eating in front of the school kids had us rolled up in laughter over the breakfast today. Brilliant. I'm very pleased about that. The story was brilliant, and your quick thinking to explain the potential dangers of it whilst you must have been in some adrenaline shock only goes to demonstrate your professionalism and quick thinking. You're a gem. You've made our day. Take care. Well, that's very kind of you. I'm sure I don't do that for everybody. I'm sure there are some people who go, oh my God, what's he on about today? And today's one may well have been that. I'm curious, are you concerned about your health? And are you looking to someone else to fix it? I think it's we're in a society where we do always look for someone else to fix all our woes. I mean, at the moment we're looking for the government to fix all the problems. Mind you, in some ways that's quite fair because the government seem to be the ones that got us into all these problems, so they can bloody well go and fix them, in my opinion. But are you somebody who looks things that should be your own agency, I suppose, like your own health is down to you. If you eat bad foods, you've only got yourself to blame. And somebody might say, look, the answer is, and you're not going to want to hear it, stop smoking, stop eating sugars, stop eating processed food, and take some exercise. And you may not want to hear that. But we all know, don't we, if we face ourselves in the mirror, that these are the things that we need to do. But I may be wrong. Maybe I am wrong. Maybe it's all wrong. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll read them out next time. Thanks for listening. I'll catch up with you soon. Bye for now.